talk is Yash Chawla, a researcher, academician, and consultant in the field of marketing and innovation management, who holds a PhD in management science. Yash has a keen interest in marketing communications, creative thinking, and sustainable development. He strives to make a positive difference for students, professionals, and society. And therefore, he works as lecturer and assistant professor at Rostock University of Technology and as R&D Communications Advisor at DAC.digital. Today, Yash will introduce the new DNA of innovation. From shallow tech to deep tech is the title of his talk today. Please welcome with me, Yash Chawla.
Hello. Great. Thank you. Nice to be here. I'm glad it is not after lunch, otherwise some of you might be falling asleep. Okay, I hope I will give you some new insights about innovation today. And starting from the history and going to what EU is planning with some funding opportunities as well, which will be explored by partners, especially in collaboration with DAC, because we strive on R&D, we grow on R&D, we work on R&D. So deep tech is something that I will concentrate a lot on today. So let's talk about the DNA of innovation, right? Going back in time where we had the printing press involved somewhere between 1400 and 1450. And then you can see the curve of innovation, or curve of how things have accelerated, has gone exponentially up after the 1950s. And this is where the way innovations come into play. We are having hard innovations where hardware is developed, we have softwares, we have internet coming up, we have Internet of Things coming up. And here, somewhere in this whole period, we started to have this conversation about companies concentrating on shallow tech or deep tech. So shallow tech, let's for our talk today. The shallow tech will be something that is digitizing the tasks that are being done repetitively. And when I talk about deep tech, I'm going deeper as I move along. But deep tech is something that is very original. You do R&D to come up with a solution to solve real world problems, and that is something very, very innovative and doesn't exist before. So let's consider this as the base. And if we see now prediction between now and 2050, they stopped at AI. When I was reading this research paper, they stopped at AI because now we are basically integrating everything. Whatever we talk about blockchain, we talk about hardware, we talk about software, we talk about construction materials, or we talk about everything. So it comes down, boils down to technology or emerging tech, which goes at this point till AI, and we have a lot of things further to explore as well. Okay, so when we want to explore this part about what next, how we go forward, we have to understand that there are some things which drive innovation more than what we perceive. So as you can see, there are a list of very successful companies on the slide in front of you. Can anybody come up with one connecting factor which has driven them towards success, from their origin to their success? And it concerns with the years that are mentioned. Anyone?
Crisis.
Yes. So if you consider all of these companies originated in crisis. How many of you heard about Moderna before COVID? The Moderna, the vaccination that we got from Moderna. Did anybody hear about that company before COVID? It was still existing, right? But it shot up during the crisis. So if we consider the world scenario at the moment, we are coming out from a crisis, or we are trying to recover from a crisis, but at the same time, there is another crisis, a global crisis which is going on. So times like this have been very rare in the past, where we have not yet emerged out of a crisis and there is another crisis which came in, especially on a global scale. Because both of the crises, if we consider the COVID or we consider the Russian war on Ukraine, both of them have had and will have global implications. So we first On one segment, in the current crisis, we are responding, and in the other one, we are kind of trying to recover. So we are very far from thriving out of this crisis. And here, research and development in deep tech gives a lot of scope. And global agencies, say if you talk about the EU level, they are recognizing this fact, and they are coming up with frameworks. But here, the small businesses and the corporate venturing, they have a very key role to play, as I will show. Of course, when we talk about future, we have to mention sustainability. But if you can see here, I write sustainability in an equation form. And the reason why we do that is, and I'm really glad that the previous speakers in the first panel, they actually all mentioned about the human factor. So we do have ability to do a lot of stuff, but at the same time, we do need to have sustaining activities to take higher precedence than the ability of what we can do. For instance, right now I'm going to be doing a thesis with a student of mine where we are going to challenge the notion of the pedestrian having priority over cars. There are so many instances where 10 cars have to brake and accelerate again for one pedestrian to cross the street. And the environmental impact of that particular thing needs a solution that would not create the pollution and the usage of resources and the safety. So we need the ability and the sustaining to come together and work. And of course, human beings or survival of the human beings need to be at the center of it. So I call it the X factor challenge here. And when we talk about innovation, in the recent innovation document given by the EU, they have listed like 5 things which are pretty common in innovation theory as well. The first one comes with celerity, so the speed of technology adoption. I think this would be something which will not be new to anyone here because all of you are such innovative people. So with telephone, it took like 75 years for it to reach about 100 million users, and for Pokemon Go, it took like 0.08. So we see that here there's an exponential decrease in the technology adoption as well as the population of technology among the consumers. So this is one. I will just go through quickly because I think this is something that we all are adverse, but I needed to create this base so that when we go to the next section, kind of makes sense. And of course, as the technology evolves, we have higher and higher complexity, and this is where the deep tech part will come in, as I will show. So we have digital technologies and electronics and different fields coming together, and we see a lot of intersection between what can be done, say, there could be an association between, say, biotechnology and automotive sectors in concerning with biofuels. So the connections that we never saw before, the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary nature of research and development today is bringing these things together. And if the companies are concentrating on deep tech, then the probability of us accelerating forward towards newer solutions which are more sustaining with equivalent to our ability will come up. And as when I mentioned this, for companies that use shallow tech, it doesn't mean that shallow tech is lower than deep tech. It's like just 2 different things and 2 different applications that we are talking about. Okay, and then we go to the concentration. As you can see, the highly digitalized industries and less digital intensive sectors as well. According to this data source, we have a lot of fluctuation in how the concentration changes. So we do need to arrive at a certain place where we have a uniform concentration, or we create clusters which can help us towards going towards adapting the future of emerging technologies. Then we talk about the costs. Now we can see that in highly digital intensity and less digital intensity sectors, the cost concentration has also been high. Now we are moving towards something which is called a zero marginal cost digital age, where we want to have products which we can put out there as soon as possible, and that is where the companies need to differ whether they want to go towards shallow tech or whether they want to go towards deep tech. And consumers, this is like the last C, and here you can see that consumers are basically driving how the innovation is taken forward. So this graph is very interesting because you see these are like top 1,000 investors in the EU 28. And if you see, the major R&D expenditures basically come from the first, say, less than 100. So majority of the R&D expenditure, if you consider this as the cumulative percentage of total R&D expenditure in the European Union, then over 75% of it would basically come from the first 80 or 85 investors out of the 100. So if we talk about deep tech and the way the investors are currently looking at it, it's still not at the point where we have too many opportunities for small and medium scale enterprises. But at the same time, the interesting fact is one of the recent research was published that the reason why this discrepancy is occurring is the major corporate venturing are basically funding the startups to do their deep tech work rather than them spending the money themselves. The reason for it is that at the end of the year, when they show that they have invested in a startup, it is an investment, not an expenditure. But if they do R&D in-house and they basically spend the money that they got to get from the, say, from their shareholders or from their profits, then basically it's shown as an expenditure. So at the end of the financial year, you basically have less profits. Whereas if you show an investment, it is still an asset. So at the end of the year, your profits are higher. So there is this new corporate venturing or investing shift that we have seen. And then this is where I have a surprise for our friend, one of our friends sitting in the audience. So I was searching for what innovation officers or chief innovation officers are awake about. And there are like certain factors, beginning with the highest technology evaluation, so about 14% of the overall. So this was like a major thing that was that came up. Of course, management and then silos between R&D and corporate venturing is also something which was a big thing. And I know that when I say that, how do the technology chief innovation officers look when they're away? So this is the okay. So I'm not going to get fired, right? Okay, so moving from that to deep tech. So I would like to stress again that I want to talk more about deep tech because we want more R&D to come in and do original things rather than just doing repetitive things. So we are talking about three phrases here. We are talking about emerging technologies being applied to create substantial advance to create to solve the world's fundamental problems. So if we take all of these together, we basically get to where we want to head in the direction of the deep tech. And let's see what are the challenges here. So there have been a lot of documents that have recently come up which list the deep tech challenges for small, medium scale enterprises. And the most of it is access to finance for deep tech scale up. So you can come up with an R&D in the lab. Like for instance, I work in academia. I know I have friends who work in, say, mechanical engineering labs. They come up with some idea which is like really innovative and so can solve some problem. But getting funding to scale up that into an industrial level commercialization, it requires a lot of support, and that is something that is missing. We don't have, actually for deep tech innovations, we don't have framework conditions. For instance, for shallow tech, we do have like, okay, and digital transformation, enabling workplaces to use digital technologies to do something. You know, so we are basically having a lot of frameworks and funding opportunities that support shallow tech companies, but whereas for deep tech, we don't have that much as yet. And then promoting ecosystems, innovation ecosystems, or tackling the innovation divide, because sometimes there are like, Radek was at the conference in Soda in Wrocław, and he was telling me that there is a really, really good company in Jelenia Góra, which does business of 100 million Polish zlotys. And it is an IT company based somewhere where there is nothing about IT going on. So this like innovation divide or this scattering, we need those people to get involved in the clusters. That is where the development association, software development associations, or things like this kind of come in. And of course, we also need talent. This is a huge, even in just shallow tech companies we go, they always have a requirement for a developer or even like people who can just write content. You can ask our marketing and Natalia here. She was like, I I want some more people. So we have a lot of scope for getting talents into it, and of course, innovation policy making framework is also something that requires some attention. Now, this is a survey, deep tech survey that was done, and you can see that when we talk about these 6 things that I also referred in the previous one, and these are the sources from where they get basic support, we see the funding basically comes from incubator or accelerator, which again point out to corporate ventures funding incubators and accelerators so they can acquire startups. So they don't want to do their own R&D, they want to fund the startups to do their work and then basically just take it up without showing it as an expense. Then if you look at market expense, again the corporation come in. So once the startup get funding, they basically create the product, and then market access is where the corporations come in and take it to the market and get the majority of the benefits. Then you got technical knowledge and know-how. You see here the universities play a major role. So the least funded universities are not as well funded as corporations, R&D sectors could be. But still technical knowledge and expertise are still developed, regarding deep tech, are still being developed in the universities. And business knowledge and expertise, again, incubator and accelerator comes in. For talent acquisition as well, incubators and accelerators comes in. Access to facilities as well. So now you see the importance of incubator and accelerators in getting deep tech into the market. But again, the funding basically comes from the corporations. Okay, now I found some interesting things from European Union. They have started some initiatives which are going to come into action from the end of this year or from up to 2024 in their new innovation policy. And they are going to be investing in enabling deep tech innovations. So there will be a new framework somewhere in the second quarter of the next year. They have an innovation test bed. This one is particularly aimed at application of hydrogen energy. Then we have launching and testing of experimentation for AI innovation. It is also scheduled for next year. Then we have state aid framework and research and development innovation, which is also sometime later this year it should be launched. And we also have an innovation procurement, especially advisory service, which the EU has to provide. And going to the next part where we are about fostering the talents as well. And you know, one of the interesting things that I came across here, if you look at all of this, there is a special emphasis on how women can contribute. So it is not just about getting the technology, but it is also about creating, promoting diversity, increasing the inclusion. So we are going towards our sustainable development goals where all 17 of them can be addressed in some way or the other. Moving to the fundings for startup, we are going to have some technical things about corporate income tax. There's going to be a new proposal sometime later this year. They produced a draft, and it seems that the draft is unavailable, so they updated the date for it to be available later in the year, because it was supposed to be Q2 2022, but it's still not out. Then we have again, a Women to Invest program and Women Entrepreneurship and Leadership scheme. So again, funding for deep tech is getting aimed at women specifically as well, which is very, very encouraging in terms of the technology sector. Then we move to a thing that I found an important framework, which I would like to stress on. So this framework was basically aimed at open innovation, but the more I read about it, the more I feel that for deep tech companies, or for companies that would like to take up R&D and work with companies that work in emerging technologies and new technologies, I think this framework is something which will come in very handy. First of all, we need to promote open innovation, and corporate venturing will play a very important part in it. And these mechanisms are something that we should look at. And I'm glad to say that with Christina and with our community team or R&D team, we are planning to implement a lot of it in terms of our community or research and development communication activities in the coming year. Especially if we talk about like organizing hackathons or challenge prizes or sharing the resources that DAC has with students or researchers. Forming strategic partnerships with other businesses who are basically thinking about moving from shallow tech towards deep tech and using more and more R&D for their products and providing solutions to their customers, or also attracting new customers. and also startup acquisitions and corporate venturing, because this is about, majorly about corporate venturing. So we do have a lot of corporate activities here as well. So small and medium scale enterprises, if they are looking to go towards becoming a corporate company, moving on public level and so on. So I think this framework that we have from tax and CEOTA is will play a very important role towards having deep tech and promoting deep tech and promoting shallow tech, deep tech, and basically the new DNA of innovation that will take us forward in the 21st century.